It's time to pay attention because I'm about to tell you the news that the loving elites don't want you to know. And it just might possibly be the most bullish news of all time. Money printing around the globe is at an all-time high, and if history is any guide, we could see Bitcoin skyrocket by 2,000%. That is right, 2,000%. This is the financial reality that's about to wake a lot of people up. We've got the Fed cutting rates. Are they bailing out the Treasury? Is that even possible? Not to mention China has fired up the money printer. And would you just look at the calendar? It's all happening, coincidentally, just days away from October. You're going to want to stay until the finish because what I'm about to cover might just shock the entire world. I'm Rustin Peace, head of news at Simply Bitcoin, and we are about to deliver some of the most bullish news of all time. You better buckle up because it's time to send it!
You have this 80 IQ guy who's just looking at the market volatility and he's saying, I don't care if it goes up or down. I'm stacking sats every single day. And he's murdering the market. So, my hat's off to the 80 IQers because they're just crushing it. They're making fools out of everybody on Wall Street, and for good reason.
So here we are again, folks. If you thought we were done with this money printing madness, you thought wrong. The world's central banks have decided, screw it, let's print more. And the US is printing, China is printing. Europe is probably setting up new ink factories as we speak. And while you can't front run El Salvador or Bhutan anymore, those guys already stacked their sats. But guess what? There are 105 other countries with money printers working overtime. And Bitcoin? Well, Bitcoin is about to swallow up that liquidity like a vacuum on overdrive. You want to front run that? Grab some Bitcoin while the rest of the world prints their fiat money into oblivion. All right, now let's get to our friends at the Fed. Jerome, don't worry, it's fine. Powell just hit us with a 50 basis point rate cut. Now, why would he do that? Because according to him and Janet Yellen, the economy is strong, unemployment is low, and inflation's under control. Sure, Jerome, and I'm the Queen of England. The reality is the US government is drowning in debt. They've racked up $1 trillion interest tab for the first time in history. And Uncle Sam doesn't have the cash to pay for it. So what does the Fed do? They cut rates, bail out the Treasury, and act like everything's fine. Meanwhile, the dollar's losing value faster than... Well, enough. Just check out this new clip from the legend Greg Foss. He explains how in 5 years, the U.S. national debt will be $60 trillion.
There is a potential for the U.S. debt machine to grind to a halt where an auction fails. And then it's like the bug hitting your windshield, right? It's like, oh my... bang, I thought I was in good shape, and all of a sudden, it's a calamity. So the people that do know, they don't want to acknowledge that this 35 trillion of debt. Now, this is so funny because in 5 years, that 35 trillion of debt, just by pure mathematics, is going to be 60 trillion.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And that will equate to 170% US GDP. And as Luke Groman points out, and others, no nation in history that spends more money on their interest expense than their military expenditures, which the U.S. just currently passed, where interest expense on the debt is only going to go higher, and military expending is going to struggle to maintain its current level. No nation that has experienced that in history has not failed. So on the one hand,
where is this in the credit market?
The credit markets are all subordinate to the treasury market. So this is where I say there's enough buyers of the current treasury market that still believe that that is your quintessential risk-free asset. There's enough buyers as long as the U.S. prints money to fill the gap that exists because you can't possibly have enough buyers for 35 trillion of debt going to 60 trillion. They don't exist. You need a buyer of last resort. Who is that? It's the U.S. Treasury, okay? It's that simple. And as long as we understand that QE infinity is baked into the math, then you can accept, okay, I'm worried about next year's bonus. And I'm fairly confident between now and next year, this thing is not going to go off the rails. Can I say between now and 20 years from now, where Mr. Saylor is still confident that Bitcoin will exist in parallel with the US dollar? Certainly, I hope that he's right, but I can't see out 20 years like that. And there is a possibility that we get a cataclysmic event. But I trust me when I say, if the USA fails, I wouldn't want to be in pretty much any other country in the world, because the trickle-down effects from the USA failing are going to be just so painful to everybody else in the world.
And you know who's been watching this whole circus play out? The Bitcoin holders, because they know that when the money printer goes burr, Bitcoin goes up. And what is happening right now isn't just a little rally. We are in the beginning of a money printing supercycle. And China, of course, they don't want to be left out of the fun. They just dropped multiple rate cuts and launched stimulus packages that make you wonder if their central bank is trying to outprint everyone else. It's like watching a race to the bottom, except instead of a trophy, the winner gets hyperinflation. Now, what's China going to do with all that freshly printed cash? Are they going to invest in bonds? Nope. Gold? Maybe, but even gold's not immune. The smart money, the hard money, that's going into Bitcoin. And if you want to be on the right side of the global liquidity surge, you stack sats. Period. All right, now let's talk some numbers, because historically, Bitcoin's Q4 has returned on average 88%. And if we hit that again, we're looking at Bitcoin close to 120K by the end of the year. But hold on, because this year isn't like any other one. I mean, this year we got the Bitcoin ETFs rolling out. We've got FTX paying back billions. We've got rate cuts fueling the fire. Add in elections and a political circus, and Bitcoin is set up for a parabolic move that could take it past 100K, and pretty easy. And what if the stars align just right? What if we hit that 2,000% move like we did in previous cycles? We could be looking at Bitcoin worth millions. Don't believe me? Well, I've got some numbers that are going to blow your mind coming up. But before that, remember, history doesn't always repeat itself, but it sure as hell does rhyme. You hear people calling Bitcoin digital gold, and they're wrong. Bitcoin is way better than gold. Gold tried to be an uncheatable ledger, but it failed because you can always dig up more. Bitcoin is actually uncheatable. A global ledger with a hard cap. You can't make more, you can't fake it, and it's becoming the ultimate store of value. Even BlackRock's own head of digital assets, yes, BlackRock, is saying Bitcoin is a global decentralized asset with no counterparty risk. When you got the big dogs of finance seeing the light, you know the game has changed. The narrative is clear. Bitcoin is now the ultimate risk-off asset. It's the global reserve for a world that's losing faith in fiat.
How hard is the sell when you think about the retail investor base that can get into this? If you're trying to tell them it's digital gold, yet the volatility is still so high, and many people don't understand exactly what it is at the end of the day. Is it something that will eventually be used as more payment methods moving forward across different parts of the world? Is it something that you hold and never sell, right? How do you then make that case to a generation of people who have not gotten into this asset?
Sure. Well, when you think about Bitcoin, we think of it primarily as an emerging global monetary alternative, right? It is a scarce, global, decentralized, non-sovereign asset, and it is an asset which has no country-specific risk, has no traditional counterparty risk. So these are interesting properties when you think of it from an investment perspective, particularly in a world where there's growing concerns over money printing, currency debasement risks, political, fiscal, sustainability challenges in the U.S. or elsewhere. And so that resonates, frankly, with a lot of investors. It goes back to what we talked about earlier with the risk-on piece. It confuses investors when people talk about it as risk-on, because based on the properties that I just described, you would think of it as risk-off. And that's where I think
it has a marketing problem.
So you could say that. And so, the reality is there's probably 2 or 3 things a year that happen typically that actually impact the fundamental value of Bitcoin. This year, I would argue there's been 4. But that makes it hard to write daily stories, right? And so you see this instinct to kind of point to whatever's happening in equities or unemployment or jobs numbers or manufacturing, which really has no connection to Bitcoin.
We are entering the money printing supercycle. Over 15 trillion has been printed globally since that thing that happened a few years ago, and we're not done yet. Central banks are going all in on liquidity. The result? Bitcoin will absorb all that excess cash like a sponge. Nothing can stop this train.
Nothing.
Bitcoin just may be entering the prophetic supercycle. where we break out of the traditional 4-year cycle and to the upside. Anything's possible. You've got institutional money pouring in, ETFs approved, countries adopting it, and not to mention the fiat system is going to shit in real time. You want to know what comes next? A financial revolution that will melt faces. We're talking about Bitcoin potentially hitting $1 million or more. And it's not just some fantasy. The math is here, the liquidity is here, and the narrative is locked in. This right here, right now is the moment that Bitcoin was made for. We're about to give you the numbers verifying that you're probably just not bullish enough. But before we do, look at our likes.
I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
If you're enjoying the show so far, don't forget to like and subscribe this video. Give us a pamp. Help us spread the sound money gospel while we take a second to recognize our sponsors, the Bitcoin Way. Guys, being that we live in clown world, it's pretty easy to understand the why Bitcoin, but over at the Bitcoin Way, that's where you're going to learn how to Bitcoin. Check out their newly revamped website. If you're looking to become a master of Bitcoin self-custody, no one makes it easier. From setting up your first wallet node to inheritance planning to everything Bitcoin sovereignty, they got you covered. Hey, and if you're looking to get started, you can schedule a free 30-minute consultation with the Bitcoin Way using that link in the show notes. Now for the big question. Is $1 million Bitcoin actually possible this cycle? Well, let me put it this way. If Bitcoin gained 2,000% from today's levels, as it did in the previous cycle, we'd be looking at well over $1 million a coin. And don't act like that's some kind of crazy idea. Bitcoin survived government bans, market crashes, pandemics, and it's still here stronger than ever. And even if we go from the low, like last cycle 3K to 69K, and we take the bottom of the recent bear market 15K and drop that in, we're still looking at 315K Bitcoin. We're about to witness Bitcoin not just as an asset, but as a global reserve currency. The world's financial system is crumbling and Bitcoin is rising from the ashes. It's the phoenix. And everything taking place right now, if you want to see $1 million Bitcoin, all of this is how it happens. Let me tell you something. The world is about to be shocked. When Bitcoin reaches new all-time highs, when it blasts past 100K, 200K and beyond, people are going to lose their minds. But here's the thing. You and I won't be surprised. We saw it coming. The money printer's going burr, the fiat system is cracking, and Bitcoin is the only lifeboat left. You want to be on the right side of history? You stack sats, you hold on, and you don't blink. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, give us a pamp, spread the sound money gospel, and remember, no sleep till Valhalla. Catch you guys tomorrow. Rust in peace. Out.
If you prefer to go down with the ship, you.